everybody. Welcome to the Otherppl Show. My name is Brad Listi. This is my podcast. Thank you for being here. Hope you're doing okay. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button wherever you listen. You can also subscribe on YouTube, and you can follow me on Instagram and Bluesky if you so desire. It is Sunday. Happy Sunday. I hope you went out protesting yesterday. I hope you made some signs and you marched. You got out into the streets. And if you missed it this time, don't miss it next time. If you can avoid it. You know what I'm saying? If you can avoid missing it. Don't try to avoid the protesting. That's what I'm saying. You got to do it. We all got to do it. I got to do it. I don't know what it's going to do, but I think you just got to get out into the streets in community with other people. So, as I was saying, it's Sunday, and as such, it is time now for another Character Studies episode where I interview a civilian. I've got a good one for you today, and it's coming up momentarily. Today's episode is brought to you by Simon & Schuster, publisher of the debut novel Tilt by Emma Patty. Set over the course of a single day, Tilt is an electrifying debut novel about one woman's journey across a transformed city, carrying the weight of her past and a fervent hope for the future. Annie is 9 months pregnant and shopping for a crib at IKEA when a massive earthquake hits Portland, Oregon, with no way to reach her husband, no phone, no money, and a city left in chaos. There's nothing to do but walk. Making her way across the wreckage of Portland, Annie experiences human desperation and human kindness. Strangers offering to help, a riot at a grocery store, and an unlikely friendship with a young mother. As she walks, Annie reflects on her struggling marriage, her disappointing career, and her anxiety about having a baby. If she can just make it home, she is determined to change her life. A propulsive debut, Tilt is a primal scream of a novel about the disappointments and desires we all carry and what each of us will do for the people we love. That's Tilt, the debut novel by Emma Patty, available from Simon & Schuster. So it kind of sounds like Die Hard in Portland, but it's like with an earthquake and a woman in her third trimester. Sounds interesting. Don't forget that I do a weekly email newsletter. If that sounds appealing, you can subscribe over at Substack, bradlisti.substack.com. I'll email you once a week right there in your inbox. And don't forget to check out my new company. It's called Deep Dive. Have you heard about this? I keep talking about it. Deep Dive is a company that specializes in the creation of long-form educational audio courses. And the debut course from Deep Dive, which will be available later this year, is called How to Write a Novel. I'm the host of the course. And it features more than 50 hours of conversations with dozens of today's leading writers talking about how to write a novel. So there's nothing quite like this on the market. Ultra long form audio courses, the kind of audio course that can accompany you, for example, over the course of a year while you work on a draft. It can be your wingman. So stay tuned. You can check out Deep Dive on the internet at www.deepdive.audio. You can sign up for the Deep Dive newsletter, and you can follow Deep Dive on Instagram and Bluesky. So once again, today is Sunday, and it is time for a new Character Studies episode. My guest is a gentleman named Dave. He's a 49-year-old entrepreneur from São Miguel, which is the largest island, the largest and most populous island in the Portuguese archipelago called the Azores, or the Azores. Fascinating conversation and an interesting life that Dave is leading. A reminder that Character Studies episodes are conversations with ordinary people, not authors, not journalists, not poets, not any kind of media figure at all. These are just people talking to me, and they appear on this show anonymously to tell me about their lives and to just have a human conversation. So if you or anyone you know fits this bill and would be a great character studies guest, you can email me. The address for the show is letters@otherppl.com. All right, so I think that does it for the preamble. Let's get to the main event. My conversation with Dave in São Miguel in this, the 5th character study in the history of this program.
Hi, my name's Dave. I'm 49 years old and I'm an entrepreneur. Yeah, I'm at home today, and home is on the island of São Miguel, which is part of the Azores archipelago, which is an area I didn't even know this place existed until probably 7, 8 years ago when I came here for the first time. It's in the middle of the North Atlantic. It's a part of Portugal, but it's one of those weird autonomous regions where they have their own government and everything. It's a group of 9 islands, about 1,000 miles away from any continent. It's 1,000 miles from Europe and about, I think, 1,400 miles from North America.
How did you wind up there?
A friend of ours from the Ozarks, where I grew up and lived my whole life, she moved here. She met a guy from Italy, and he was a sailor. They sailed all around the world, and they settled here. And they said it was their favorite place in the world, and they built a house here. And we came to visit them in October of 2017. Spent a few weeks here, and I think by the time we left, we kind of felt like we just wanted to stay here. We had, well, we still have 3 kids, but at that time our kids were getting close to school age. Our oldest was 4.5, and we were starting to kind of have that anxiety about sending kids to school, and this just felt like a better place to do it. And so it took a few years to get the plan together, and we ended up moving here a couple years after that.
And how's it going?
Oh, it's going. I mean, the honeymoon's over for sure. It's not easy. The language barrier is. I thought I'd be okay because I already knew some Spanish, and but Portuguese is much more difficult. And I've been here for going on 5 years now, and it's well, actually over 5 years. But yeah, it's still a challenge. I've spent time in the classroom. I can understand most of what I read, but I can't understand most of what people say to me. And I think part of that is the dialect here on the island. It's not so much traditional Portuguese. It's a little different.
And there's like schools for your kids? Like your kids must be speaking Portuguese.
Yeah, my kids are doing much better than I am. They're like sponges. They soak it up. My oldest is almost 12 years old now, and he's done extremely well. And so we just started. We came here. We didn't know anything about the school system, really. We moved here in the middle of 2020, which obviously would not be the best time to move to a new country, and that was a crazy year. But we just went to the public school next, close to the house that we bought, and we were surprised to find out that we were the only foreign family in the entire school system. We thought it would be. We thought there were more immigrants here, more expats here, but not so much. 5 years ago, anyway, there not. We were the only foreigners in the school system, and Since then, we switched to a private school, and it's a little better, but yeah, it's been an adventure. It's we came here, we were able to come here because I started a business online, selling products mostly on Amazon, and so I could do that from anywhere. And like most things, that business has not lasted forever. It's kind of been trending in the wrong direction for a little while for a few reasons. So the challenge now is, and we're in the process of starting a business here on the island. My wife's a dance teacher and a Pilates instructor, and we're getting that going. But yeah, it's not easy, and you always wonder, if you could go back. It's always in the back of your mind. Plan B is always to go back home, where life is much more convenient, and it's certainly a lot easier to make money back in the states.
I guess. I don't know. I feel like I mean, I'm sort of envious. It sounds good to be on some sort of like archipelago 1,000 miles from any continent right about now.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I would say we were a little ahead of our time on that one, but we we first came here in 2017, which that was the first year of the first um, Trump administration, and I have to say that was a factor in us kind of looking for an escape. And the day we landed here on Halloween of 2020, and it was a few days after that was the next election where Biden was elected, and we thought that was the end of that guy, and little did we know.
So the ability that you have to live there and be a resident is contingent upon the fact that you're a business owner. Like they give you a visa. Is that how it works?
Yeah, we applied for residency visas, and yeah, you do have to show how you're able to support yourself financially. A lot of people retire here, and there are certain things you can do when you're retired, where you can kind of get around that. There's a thing called NHR, which is like a non-habitual resident. Um, but basically, once you're here and once you have residency, I mean, they're not really checking up on me, to see to check our income or things like that. And it's Portugal. I've heard is one of the easier countries to immigrate to, or it was at the time that we came here. Pretty lenient on who they allow to move here.
So how many people are on the island that you're on?
It's 150,000 on this island. All 9 islands together is about 250,000. So we're on the big one. There's one city of about 70,000 people, the city of Ponta Delgada, and we live about 10 minutes out of the city, like in one of the other towns that's kind of up and coming. They just built a big international hospital here, and like it's civilized. It's a nice place to live.
Okay, so you're not like foraging for food or anything. Like you're
No, no, we're not eating coconuts and spearing fish. It's very much like the real world. Yeah,
it's like Mosquito Coast style
for sure.
childhood for your children. I mean, it sounds very interesting. Do you know your neighbors?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, yeah. It's funny here. I thought the first time we came here and we started, well, especially when we started shopping for homes to buy, it's a cultural thing here. All of the properties, like even just in a neighborhood like where we live, they really value privacy. So every property has like these big stone walls around all the borders. So it seems like people really keep to themselves. Like it's very private, but the people are also very friendly, and uh, even if you can't speak their language, all of our neighbors are very kind, and they really, especially, are kind towards children. And that was something we noticed the first time we came here, was the to contrast it, with the culture we came from, is people I think are increasingly becoming more isolated, and it's not really like that here. In a lot of ways, it's like traveling. back a few decades to how things used to be. At least where I grew up, where what we would call now like free range childhood or free range parenting, where it's just people are a little more free to just let their kids live that way, which now is kind of. I just read, this is on my mind because I was reading The Anxious Generation. I don't know if you've read that book. It was a book of research that came out last year about it's making a case for how we should go back to that the world today is not actually any more dangerous than it was in the 70s and 80s, like when we grew up, when kids were kind of just free to roam and go to the park and do what they want without having DFS called on their parents. Anyway, it's very much like that here still.
Oh, that sounds great. That's how I was raised. I mean, we're the same age, so I feel like when I think back to my childhood and the amount of like freedom I had to just ride my bike all over town and hang out with my friends and go to the creek, and I mean, it was my parents were nowhere nearby. It was totally different. And for some reason, I cannot imagine. I guess I live in
Yeah,
Los
no,
Angeles.
especially in the summertime.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I live in Los Angeles, so it's not the same. And letting kids run wild in a city is different. But you grew up in the Ozarks.
I did. Yeah, I grew up in a really small town in the Ozarks, which it's funny to me now that uh, people know. Like I can say I'm from the Ozarks, even here, even with Europeans, I can say I'm from the Ozarks, and they know what I'm talking about because of that show on Netflix.
Oh, right.
Because Jason Bateman made that series, everybody's seen that like worldwide. Before I would have to explain, oh, it's in southern Missouri, and where is Missouri? For somebody from another country wouldn't even know that. But yeah, I lived in Missouri my entire life until we moved here 5 years ago.
So, what was your childhood like in the Ozarks?
It was good. It was kind of like what I said, where it was you knew everybody. It was there was really no crime. A g- it was a good place to grow up, and it was a town. It was a small town, population 300. It's called Taneyville is the name of it, and it's still 300 people today. Like a lot of those
This
small towns.
the same
Uh,
300 people, or is it different? Has it changed out?
Give or take, it's probably a lot of the same people. Yeah, um, but that's the way I think a lot of rural America is, where those towns really have, if they haven't shrunk, they've stayed about the same size.
Yeah,
And
forgive me for saying this, but I feel like when I think of the Ozarks, I'm thinking like crystal meth and like Winter's Bone. Maybe that show Ozarks or whatever.
yeah,
It's
yeah, no, you got it. Yeah, Winter's Bone was a little closer to the real thing. I actually, no disrespect to Jason Bateman, but I didn't make it through the first season of Ozark because when I got to the episode where the guy was growing the field of opium poppies to like the heroin biz, there's no heroin business in the Ozarks. That was pretty far fetched. It is all crystal meth, or as they call it, crank. It's known as crank in the Ozarks,
right.
and
I remember that. I remember that term.
it's
From my Indiana
yeah,
upbringing.
it's still a big problem. It's so 10 years ago we bought a farmhouse after I got married, and we had lived in the city, which is Springfield. It's like a college town. It's like 200,000 people. We got married, we bought a farmhouse, and we moved back out to the country, and that's where our first two kids were born. And we only lasted a few years out there. It was really disappointing. Like shady characters. You would get padlocks cut off of your barn and your outbuildings, and things would get stolen. Um, I actually had a gun come up missing that was hidden very carefully in a place in my house, and one day it was just gone. And my wife didn't feel safe out there. She didn't feel safe being alone out there, and it was not at all like that when I was a kid. Like nobody. It was the typical latchkey childhood. Nobody locked their doors. There were no problems, and I put almost all of that on the crystal meth problem that started in the 90s, I think.
God. And what did your what do you come from a farming family or something? What did your folks do in this tiny town in southern Missouri?
Um, my grandparents, yeah. On one side, he was a farmer. My other grandfather was a carpenter. Um, my grandmother ran a little diner in the town. It was the only place to eat within 15 or 20 miles. Um, my dad worked for the electric company, like climbing the telephone poles and working on the power lines and things like that. And my mom worked in banks, and then she got into politics. She was an elected official in the county government, things like that.
Wow. Okay. And so religious upbringing?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say about my childhood. It was all pretty idyllic, except for the religion. Yeah, it was uh, Pentecostal, which our church was the Taneyville Apostolic Faith Church, which no longer exists. But it was a Pentecostal church, and it was pretty wild and crazy, and I've written a lot about it. It's there were no snake handlers. That's usually the first question I get. No snakes, but it was speaking in tongues and just the whole doomsday Armageddon Antichrist. Like I basically grew up uh, believing it was the end of the world, which is not something I would ever want to teach my children. So
So okay, so you're in this church with your parents. Are your parents speaking in tongues and stuff in front of you when you're a kid?
no, my parents never. My dad actually never went. My dad didn't go to church. My mother did. Her my mother's dad, who was the carpenter, he was also the minister at this church for like a decade, I think, like back in the 50s or 60s. And so she was raised in that same church. And so she went. She never spoke in tongues, but other people did.
And what were you thinking? Like, and did you
And
have any siblings, or were you an only child? I'm
I
imagining
was
you
an only
did.
child. Yeah,
Oh, you
I
were.
was an
Okay,
only
so
child. It always seemed strange to me. I think in a way, like, and kids are just naturally kind of keen to the sort of thing. It seemed like a performance, and I think children can tell that maybe, I could anyway. Like it never seemed genuine to me, um, and there were only a few people that would do that. But what would always happen at the end of every service was, and so it was lively. The only good thing I can say about it was the music was great. There were a lot of talented musicians and instruments. That was good. But the structure was music, the doomsday sermon. Not every time, but that was typically the mood. Is we're living in the end times, is what they called it. Jesus is coming back any day now. All signs are pointing to that. And then at the end of the service would be the altar call. Do you know what the altar call is?
no,
Okay, so at the end of every service, the preacher would ask anyone who has not been saved to come down in front of the entire church to the altar and get saved. And it was always kind of a dramatic moment, for any visitors. Like I would bring friends to church when I was a little older, like a teenager, and like it can be that part of the service can be pretty intimidating, I think, for newcomers.
Was there always somebody who took the bait and was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna get saved. I'm coming on
It
down."
would happen, yeah. It eventually happened with my dad. When I was, I think, in 8th grade, 13 or 14 years old, sometime around there, my dad finally did give in and start coming to church with us. And I can still remember when he went down and he, yeah, took the bait and became a believer. And I was at that time also. And I, I think I really was until I moved away to college. And then I pretty much just quit cold turkey at that point when I was 17.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Like maybe your dad just had like a rough week and he's like, "All right, I'll go down." What do they do? Did they lay hands? Was it like a laying of
Yeah,
hands and like
yes. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, the person will kneel down at the altar, and then yeah, people will kind of gather around them and pray and cry, and it can be pretty wild.
so how are you responding when your dad goes to get saved? What's going on with you?
I can't actually remember if I went down or not. I think I probably did. Probably followed him to the altar down there. That part is a little fuzzy. So I've written a lot about this, and those little moments. There's I started kind of journaling about all of this. I'd never written about this church at all until about 2 years ago, and I planned on journaling about it, which I think was a recommendation by my therapist. But it quickly just became fictional because you can't really remember the moments exactly, and so I just started making shit up, and so I've written about it a lot, and it's been very therapeutic. It's the best thing I've ever done, probably. I've
So you but
written
like
about
this
it every day
clearly
for the past 2 years.
but this clearly traumatized you.
Yeah, yeah, it did, and it's something that, um, yeah, I didn't give it enough. I didn't give that trauma its due really until I don't know, recently. Even though I gave up the beliefs a long time ago, you kind of just put it behind you, I guess.
Well, it's a pretty heavy thing to lay on a kid that you're living in end times and the world is gonna explode at any moment, right? I mean, is this what like when you think about the trauma that you
Yes.
carry, is it like what is it rooted in? Is it rooted in like this fear of hell or the devil or like what is it?
No, I mean I don't believe any of those things are real any longer, but I think the
Well, no,
feeling
no, no, no. But I
of
mean, no,
uh
I mean, like when you were a kid, like you clearly were internalizing this stuff. Like, isn't that where the trauma's from?
oh, right, right, yeah. Yeah, no, I was very much afraid of the devil. I slept with my light on, like my bedside lamp on, until I was way too old to be doing that. And that was what I realize now, writing about it, is I did think the devil was real. I watched him, I would hear about movies like The Exorcist or something and think it was a documentary. Like I believed all of these things were real, which sounds crazy now, but yeah, it was very traumatizing. I can't imagine. So I have 3 kids now, 3 boys. Their ages like 8 to 11. I can't imagine teaching them that if you do the wrong thing, there's this place called hell that you get tortured for all of
Yeah.
eternity. That seems completely insane to me and almost criminal, like abusive. But it's normal to, I don't know, millions of people.
Well, that happened to me. I remember distinctly
Uh,
in CCD, which is what the Catholics call like class. You know, it's like elementary school age kids go learn about Jesus or whatever. And I distinctly remember this teacher telling us that there was such a thing as a cardinal sin, and if you committed a cardinal sin, that was the kind of sin that God wouldn't forgive you for, and you would burn in hell for eternity. And like, what the fuck? Like, and by the way, I don't
yeah,
think they. I guess there's some churches where this still
unforgivable.
happens.
Yeah.
It's just yeah, just like goofy. It's just silly, like and embarrassing for them that they're doing this to children. And I feel like it's not. happening probably as much as it used to, if at all, in the Catholic Church, though I'm sure in some churches it does. But it's just kind of funny to me that this sort of thing would like fade out. Nobody would ever explain or like apologize. Like, oh, by the way, we were just kidding about the whole Satan and hell thing and the eternal damnation and fire. Like it just sort of faded out because the constituents just, I don't know what happened. Humanity evolved, or the what do you call it? The congregation just wasn't into it anymore. Wasn't buying it.
Yeah, it seemed. I mean, the statistics show that it's fading away. I mean, organized religion in general, which I don't necessarily have a problem with, but I guess we're just talking about. Well, you're talking about Catholicism. I'm talking about more like Protestant fundamentalism, but um, yeah, they both have a history of wanting to scare the shit out of kids for some reason. It's just it's hard to understand how anyone ever embraced it, and I don't know. And so then now I think just from what I've heard you say and of what I've read in your book is then you're kind of left with this void of, well, what do we teach these kids? And it's not so easy. I try to be as honest and open as I can be, uh, which is something I remember you saying. And I had a similar experience where my wife told me to take a step back and maybe play it a little softer, like Santa Claus is real, sort of philosophy.
Let them have a childhood. Yeah. So you
Yeah.
you grow up in this church and in this small town. It's an otherwise like happy, healthy childhood. Kind of like living in the country and having access to the outdoors. And then did you go off to college?
Yeah, I didn't go far. I was still in the Ozarks in Springfield, which there's a state university there, Missouri State. And yeah, I went there, and then I ended up yeah just getting stuck in Springfield for my whole adult life, yeah, until I was 40, 45.
And what did you
And
study in school?
well, I went for engineering because I tested really high in math and science, and that lasted for about 2 years, and I just kind of got burned out on that, and I just wasn't a disciplined student. I changed majors several times and just never really um, could find something my heart was in. I ended up graduating with a degree in computer information technology. But it took me about 10 years to actually getting around to using that degree for anything. I was just a bartender and a server, and that's pretty much all I did throughout my 20s was just work in restaurants and um, drink more than I should and things like that. Kind of having a good time until I got married and settled down and started having these kids.
So wait, now you don't go far from home for school. You're kind of a little bit lost, as everybody tends to be in their 20s. I mean, that's kind of what that decade seems to be about for most of us. But when you look back on your youth, aside from, kind of a happy childhood and a weird church, is there anything else that happened when you were a kid or when you were a young person that you look back on and think of as formative when it comes to who you are today?
Yeah, I mean, I never really fit in there, like not just in the church aspect, but just in general. Um, like the culture there is what you can imagine is like a good example is I remember being the only kid in my class at school, like pretty young, like third or fourth grade. Um, the only boy anyway that didn't bring a Polaroid of his dead deer to school during deer season. When you go hunting in deer season and you kill and tag a deer, they take your picture with it. And I just remember all the other kids showing off those photos, and I never did that. My dad did hunt, and I went with him a few times. but I just never took to it, and it wasn't any sort of moral stance I was taking. I just didn't like getting up before daylight and sitting in a tree, and in the freezing cold weather. And he didn't really push it.
Uh-huh.
I think he told me years later he was actually fine with it because he couldn't get me to be quiet. He thought I was scaring all the deer away.
Yeah, I don't
So it
I
was
don't get it
things like
either.
that where,
I don't understand that at all. Like what's the fun of shooting animals? I don't get it.
yeah, I have to be honest. I heard you deer hunting came up in a conversation you had recently, and I made a mental note to bring this up um, about whoever you were talking to. It was like they didn't understand the point of hunting, and even though it was never my thing, it does serve, at least like in the Midwest, it serves like a fundamental purpose because mankind has drove all the predators to near extinction. Like there are no more wolves anymore to control the deer population, so now mankind has to assume the role of predator to keep certain populations under control. So there's not too many deer that are eating all of the crops and getting uh, becoming roadkill on the highway and things like that.
So anything else like formative that happened to you as a young person?
Um, no, I mean, I could talk more about the church, and there was, I think, kind of an extreme thing that happened for me, which at this point, this is kind of like a 1980s trope sort of thing, where they taught us that rock and roll was evil or satanic, and that if you played records backwards, it was called backward masking. That you could hear messages from Satan directly on the record, and so this was something they taught us in our youth group, and they had all of us they wanted us to bring all of our music to church, and they had a big record burning, which at that time, this was like mid 80s, it was more like a cassette tape burning. And so that's a memory that stands out. And I have to give it to my my mom. She was not on board with this, even though she had gone to that church since she was a little girl. She That was a step too far for even her. And so what she did, she kind of tricked me because I had a pretty big music collection, and mostly just pop music and things like that. And she said, "Why don't you just take one tape to church, and I'll just get rid of the rest of it right now. I'll just throw it away for you." And so I just took one cassette. I don't remember how I chose. I think I just maybe grabbed one at random, but I remember that I burned Huey Lewis on the News. I think it was I think it was Four. The album
Uh-huh.
Four was big at that time.
And by the way,
Yeah,
there is not there's not a bigger purveyor of satanic principles than Huey Lewis. He's a dark figure.
you won't believe this. He was in the propaganda. So they had this audio collection and youth group, and these comic books, basically, all this stuff to teach us about backward masking and the satanic music. And I found all this stuff on eBay. I've got it in my office now. Um, Huey Lewis made the cut. There's a song called Jacob's Ladder, which I don't know how they interpreted it as being satanic. I've read the lyrics, but I remember that being mentioned. So I thought maybe that's why I chose that one. It's like, oh, it's it's one of the artists they mentioned.
Yeah, I
So
don't
I
think
threw
it.
that one in the burn barrel.
Maybe it was "I Want a New Drug." Maybe that was what they thought was satanic, or "Hip to Be Square."
Right. Yeah. Yeah, they were that's the album. You know it. You're a fan.
God, that was I want to say one of the first concerts I ever went to was Huey Lewis in the News years ago.
Yeah. And so the rest of that story is I don't know how much time went by, but it wasn't long, maybe a couple of weeks. And I kind of regretted my decision to get rid of all my music and So my mom gave it all back to me, and so
So she didn't throw it away.
she didn't throw it away. She faked it. She went and hid it in the garage or something, and then uh, when I changed my mind, she gave it all back to me. So she knew that was yeah, just some crazy stuff. But that's kind of it's kind of how everything was. I remember. I know how kids are. I know I asked questions, but I don't think I ever really got any straight answers. It's always this fine line of like, and I think this is true not just with my mom, but with a lot of people. Do they really believe this stuff, or is this just a social commitment? Are they just going through the motions to a certain degree? I always wonder how if people are really indoctrinated, or if it's just the only community they know. It's that's interesting to me.
Yeah, it's probably a mix, I would guess.
Yeah.
So when you look back, are you angry? Like, how do you sort out your feelings on this? Like, you're like, are
Well,
you mad?
when I started writing about this, I was very angry, and I can read the stuff that I wrote early on, like 2 years ago, and I did start from a very cynical, angry place. But as it went on, I don't know. I kind of, there's, I forgive it, and when I say I forgive it, I mean these people really are just doing the best that they know how to do. It's in a way we're all just doing the best though that we know how to. It's what they were raised in. It's all they knew. It's just like I was raised in. It's all I knew. I was just kind of lucky to snap out of it when I moved away. And I know you've had a similar experience. I mean, not. I don't think it took this for you uh, to give up your faith or to see it for what it is. But when I think I was 19 when I had my first psychedelic experience, and I'd already been like 2 years into not believing anymore, but I still carried a lot of shame or guilt, or if there's a difference in those two words. But I just remember one night when I was 19, like all of that just evaporating and finally being able to really see it for what it was.
So wait, you were tripping when this happened?
Yeah.
On
Yeah.
what?
I tried LSD when I was 19, and it was. I mean, it's one of the best things that ever happened to me, and I wasn't a person who I didn't do it a lot. I didn't really need it again. Like it was just a realization of it was just kind of a reset, kind of just seeing the world with new eyes, or seeing it for the first time, and not having it colored by the indoctrination, of things we're taught when we're kids before we're old enough to really discern what's true and what's not. I think it really does serve a purpose, and that was 30 years ago. We're just now as a society coming around to appreciating the value of these things, like in mainstream culture, and I think that's pretty exciting.
So, what about your folks? Like, where are they? Are they still alive?
My dad passed away like in 2016. My mom is still around. She no longer lives in Taneyville. She moved to Springfield, and she goes to a bigger church, not quite like a mega church, but it's pretty close. So she's away from the wild Pentecostal ways, but she's still a believer.
And do you have conversations with her about this? Do you tell her you dropped acid and had a revelation?
Yeah. No, it's oddly easy to avoid. It's it's almost a thing like the Ozarks isn't quite the South, but it kind of is. It's kind of right on that line. I think there's a thing about even within families where you just people don't really talk about things like it's like a politeness like you want to keep the conversation light and friendly like we've never really talked about it. There was one time I brought it up after I started having kids, and it was the first time she'd ever really pushed the issue. She wanted my kids to go to the summertime like vacation Bible school event at her church, and I wasn't going to go for that, and so I had to talk to her, and I was nervous. This was, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, and so I actually made a few pages of notes, wrote it all out, like the bullet points of why they would never go to a church like that, and I still remember the main points. Though I mean, the big one for me was the the trauma of believing it was the end of the fucking world. I mean, that's a big one. And then also, being we have, I mean, my kids' godparents were lesbians, like our best friends, and the church teaching that that lifestyle is sinful, and that was a big one. Oh, also the anti-science, the push to put the creation story into classrooms, and that teaching the evolution is like some trick of the devil to whatever that nonsense is. They're not going My kids are never going to be taught to take any of that stuff seriously. And so I told her all that. And she had really nothing to say. I can remember it was just this conversation. We're both sitting on the couch and looking straight forward. There's not a lot of eye contact. It's super awkward. But I said all of it.
Wait, and were you like
And
reading? Were you reading off note cards? Like, what were you doing?
no, I didn't. I think I had it in my pocket. I didn't get it out. Like at that point, I think I'd rehearsed it to the point where I didn't have to read it anymore. I was paraphrasing, but she didn't really have anything to say. And then it was just later that year, maybe like a month later, she said something that it was almost like she pretended the conversation had never happened, and it's never come up since then. That was like the one and only time that we really ever, I want to say, have a conversation, but it was more like a monologue. Like she didn't really know how to respond to it.
Fascinating. And then just kind of blocked it out.
I think so. I think, yeah, that's what it seemed like to me.
So where are you now? Like you say, you're not raising your kids with any kind of like Pentecostal dogma. Are you like do you consider yourself an atheist or an agnostic? Do you identify it as anything?
I don't think I've ever considered myself an atheist, just because there's too much that we can't explain, and I I think I'm leaning more. Uh, I don't really know how to define it, and labeling it is always kind of impossible. But like I've been when I was in my early 20s, I started to kind of explore everything. I wanted to understand Buddhism and anything I could try to get my hands on, and I never could really get a grasp on it. Reincarnation and everything. Even now, I've been meditating pretty much every day for the past 8 years, and on the meditation app I use, there's a lot of talks that I listen to about Buddhism proper, not just mindfulness, and I'm interested in it, but I still can't get my head around faith in any sort of way when it comes to reincarnation or any sort of afterlife. It's still wide open to me. I could go either way on that.
So you're in college and then you're a bartender and working in restaurants for basically your 20s. And then at some point that shifts when you meet your wife. Is that what happened?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I was in my early 30s then, and yeah, We met and got married about a year later, and bought the farmhouse out in the country and started having kids and settled down.
How did you guys meet?
A mutual friend from the restaurant. Yeah, my wife said I had actually waited on her several times, but I did not remember it. Like I I don't know how I lasted. I think it was 12 years working in restaurants because I am extremely introverted, and that is not really the job for an introvert. To be a server and a bartender.
I have a friend who is a waiter and has been a waiter since we were kids, essentially. And I would call him introverted, but I think that there's something about the scripted nature of it and how it's like a controlled social scene. Like you're kind of in control when you're the server. You sort of know what to
Right.
say. You develop a little shorthand way of dealing with customers, right? I mean, maybe
That is
that's
that
how.
is correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's easier. It's easier when it's anonymous. Later in my serving career, I started working at like smaller, more upscale restaurants, and you get a lot of the same people coming in every week, and they want to be treated like a VIP, and so that's where my personality kind of clashed with. You kind of have to put on a performance. For regular customers. When you're just working at a corporate restaurant and you're anonymous, yeah, it's much easier for an introvert to survive in that environment.
So when you finally got out of restaurants, what did you transition to with this computer? What did you have, like a computer science degree or?
Yeah, it wasn't computer science. I wasn't that ambitious. It was just computer information technology, which is kind of the lower tier. But yeah, I went, got the job setting in a cubicle, and it was a banking software company. And it's funny. So contrasting the restaurant jobs with that, I made lifelong friends, people I still keep in touch with to this day, even though I haven't worked in a restaurant in going on almost 20 years now. Uh, it's such a different environment, and I would even say a different sort of person that gravitates to that industry compared to the um, corporate world. I worked at that corporate job working on banking software in that cubicle for 10 years or more than 10 years. And I left that place and I never kept in touch with a single person from that place since then. And I think maybe it's not the people, maybe it's more about the nature of the work. You're just stuck on the screen. It's just 100% screen time pretty much all day long. So it's a different sort of thing.
Were you miserable?
Yeah, very much. I was always kind of looking for a way out of that. Um, what people are calling a side hustle now, which I hate that term, but that's kind of what I was doing all along. I mean, it was nice at first to get out of the restaurant. I mean, that's the restaurant business is really hard on you psychologically, especially if you're an introvert. So it was relaxing to go sit in the cubicle and just do some office work for the first few years, I would say. But it's uh, it's soul sucking. There's really nobody's heart is really in that kind of work. So I was always kind of looking for a way out, and it was around the time that we came here to visit for the first time in 2017. I had started um, kind of messing around with learning how to sell things on Amazon. Is how it started. And when we came here, it was actually our first day here on the island. We were staying in our Airbnb, and I got the notification on my app that I'd sold my first item on Amazon, and it all kind of came together at the same time. Like I remember being like jet lagged, I guess. I couldn't sleep. Everybody else is asleep, and I'm just laying there staring at the ceiling, in the middle of the night. And I think we'd been there for a few days, and was already getting the feeling of, oh, I should also mention this was my very first time in my entire life of being outside of the United States. I didn't get my passport until I got it for the trip to come here. I'd never been anywhere. And so being out of the States for the first time and being here in a place, they just felt really safe and slow. And we were already, I think, considering the move even before we came here in an odd way, like just kind of looking for something to, like, for a way out. Um, I couldn't sleep, so I got my phone out, which is what you're not supposed to do when you can't sleep, is to get your phone out. And I opened up the New York Times app to read the news, and um, the top headline was the mass shooting in Las Vegas, which was the one at the concert, like the worst one ever, pretty much.
Oh, the one where the guy was
And
like hanging out the window at the hotel with
yeah,
the machine. Oh boy.
yeah, it was it was awful. And I just remember reading that story, and like I, f- I felt like I was I might as well have been on the moon. Like I felt like I was in a different world altogether, like kind of looking back at it and just kind of not ever wanting to go home again. Like I just felt like I just wanted to stay here. And that was kind of a big moment that I'll never forget. Um, there was a few moments like that, and it's all, I'm not an everything happens for a reason kind of person, even though I did start reading a book, or I read a book this year or last year called The Soul's Code, which is a lot about destiny. And anyway, I'm digressing, but we started going back and forth between here and the States. And every summer, I quit my corporate job in 2019, and we spent the whole summer here, and we bought this house that I'm sitting in right now. And we're flying flying home after that summer, after being here for 2.5 months. And I'm wondering, if I'm crazy. I'm very prone to doubting myself and being second guessing everything. And we land at the Boston airport, and before you even get off the plane, I've got my phone out, and I read the news. And the headlines that day were, it was not one but two mass shootings on the same day. It was Dayton, Ohio, and El Paso, Texas. It was a Walmart in El Paso, Texas. And that was the first thing I saw when we came back. So that was kind of reassuring that, yes, we're doing the right thing. Let's just, we got to give this a shot. Um, and so we go home, and our first day home in Springfield, Missouri, uh, there is a guy live streaming himself walking around Walmart in our town in full Kevlar, like bulletproof gear, and an AR-15, uh, live streaming on Facebook or whatever. Like that was the big news story that day, our first day home. He got tackled and arrested. He didn't shoot anybody, but that seemed to be where it was going. And so the day after that, we had to. It was back to school time. We had to go um, to Walmart to get all of our school supplies. And I just remember, with my list of things like shopping for crayons and shit, and like feeling really anxious and paranoid and looking over my shoulder, and just not happy to be back home at all. Just
But I got to believe São Miguel is gorgeous. It's a beautiful place, right?
it is, yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, it's beautiful. It's kind of like some parts of the island are kind of like the Pacific Northwest. Like it's forests and rivers and lakes, and yeah, it's beautiful here. I mean, there are beaches too. I'm not as much of a beach person. I'm more of a, like, hiking and things like that. But yeah, it's a beautiful place. And just the last thing I'll say about that, there are no guns here, like by law. I've heard you can get a gun if you're a farmer and you need to shoot a rabbit or something, but there are virtually no guns here. And I came from a place like the Ozarks. Uh, it might be the most guns per capita place on planet Earth. Like, I don't know. It's everybody had guns. I
You get a
had guns
g-
before I moved here. Like
no, I was
everybody,
going to say you get a gun when you're born at the hospital. They give you a
right?
shotgun.
Right.
Oh my God. So, okay, so you must have been selling a good amount of products on Amazon if you were able to like drop everything and go to São Miguel, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I did really well. I mean, I might have even just got lucky, but I did a lot of research. Like, um, after we started having kids, I negotiated a deal with my job, so I got out of the cubicle and I started working from home. Um, that was in 2017, and when I started working from home, I was working the night shift, so I was basically just on call. Like if a bank had a problem with their computer systems, and I just started learning how to uh, sell things on Amazon, and I started doing a lot of product research. And you can buy software for that. Back then, it's this is not the opportunity today is not nearly what it was 8 years ago. It's kind of saturated now, but I gravitated to like natural products. Being in California, I'm sure you know, like all the supermarkets started banning plastic bags around that time, and so it was kind of a timing thing. I started having reusable produce bags made of like natural cotton materials and like sustainable materials made in India and imported to the states, and it went really well. Like it, I actually had the good problem of I couldn't make have the products made fast enough. I didn't have any investors. It was just me, and so the opportunity was bigger than I could even handle. And so I I started. I was making much more money doing that than I was at my corporate software job.
Wow. So you know, then that's
But
financing the
that
move.
that wave kind of yeah, yeah, it got us here, and 2020 caused a lot of problems. I mean, not only were we not allowed to move here into this house that we had just bought, we bought the house right before the pandemic hit and went back home to let our kids do another school year. And then COVID happened and we weren't allowed to move. All the embassies closed. We couldn't get our visas to become Portuguese residents. So we got stuck in the States for about half a year, and it destroyed my business because I only sold gear for grocery shopping, and everybody stopped going to the supermarkets in 2020. It all turned into grocery delivery and curbside pickup, and it was never the same again after that.
Oh,
Really,
right,
I mean,
right.
that's part of the story. It's also just market saturation. More people caught on to the product and more sellers.
So, okay, so you're in São Miguel. You've made the leap. You're raising your kids on this, in this archipelago, 1,000 miles from any continent in the middle of the North Atlantic. And I have to believe there was a really nice honeymoon period where you're like, holy shit, we did it. Like we're living this adventure and it's beautiful here and we're out of Missouri and you're kind of proud of yourself and feeling good, right?
There absolutely was. Yeah. No, I remember landing here. We landed like at daylight, like at 6 in the morning, and yeah, we were very very happy to be here. I mean, the way everything happened with the pandemic, we weren't. Nobody could tell us anything. We didn't know if and when we would ever be able to move. Um, I took video footage at the Boston airport whenever we came here, and on Halloween of 2020, and we were in the international terminal, which is a big terminal, and we were literally the only people there, me and my wife and my three kids. It was in the middle of the afternoon, and it was just completely empty. Like it, um, a few people came in after that, and I think there was like 10 people on our flight from Boston to the island here, which is, I mean, it was a big plane, like a 737 or whatever, and there was only 10 people on it. But we were happy to land and happy to be here, and there was like no COVID here at that time. Like, maybe a case here and there. They were very strict, about people landing and um, testing at the airport and having an entire hotel like dedicated to anybody that tested positive. It was very controlled. Everybody wore masks. It was not politicized. If you wore a mask, it meant you were a liberal. None of that shit existed here. It was a big, a big relief to be here.
So, how long did the honeymoon last?
I would say, I mean, it kind of just fades out eventually. I can't think of a certain moment where uh, it just stopped, but it was again, this wasn't a typical time. Like our kids couldn't even go to school in the beginning, really, because the schools were closed, and it was a confusing time to move. Um, but it was beautiful, and we just kind of embraced being here. I think I completely stopped following the news entirely. Like did the thing where I deleted apps, I killed my social media, I did all of that just as kind of a detox from all the craziness that led up to this. That was, as everybody can remember, a pretty crazy year to try to keep up with everything that was going on. And now we're very happy to be here, and just very fortunate to find out about this place and to have someone to kind of show us the way. To have a friend here already.
Does that
And
friend still live
yeah,
there?
we don't. Yeah, she does. Yeah, she still lives here. We were the third family from the Ozarks to move here. There's three households here that are friends of ours, and we've made a ton of friends here on the island. There's starting to be a pretty big international community of people from the States and from Canada and all over Europe that are all moving here. All of our friends are mostly people with young children, just naturally, just the parents of the other parents from our school and things like that. But everybody kind of has the same story. It's you come here not only because it's a beautiful, amazing place. You're The other side of that is you're also kind of taking refuge from from a world that seems to be going off the rails a little bit.
Totally. So, you're thinking of making a life there, or you're pondering whether to move back? Like, where do things stand today?
It's We don't have any plans to move. It always just comes down to if you. It's basically just financial decisions. You're kind of always weighing that. Like, can we still keep the income flowing in here by starting a business here, or making money remotely online? Or would it make more sense to go back home? But no, as of right now, we're gonna keep the dream alive and uh, keep it going here. This is the only life my kids really know. Like my oldest son was 5 when we moved here, so he remembers a little more from going to kindergarten and part of first grade back in the States. But this is the only life they know, and they we go back every summer to visit. So we do the back and forth now, just the other way around, and I'll check their temperature on that and what they think, and we'll go back and do fun things like go to amusement parks and water parks and roller coasters and everything we can possibly do when we're back in the States that kids would like to do, and they still want to stay here, so they're still on that side of it.
Does your mom ever come out to visit?
Yeah, she's been here 3 times, I think. Yeah,
What does she think?
yeah. I've The first time we brought her here was before we kind of did the soft sell. Uh, we brought her and my wife's mother here the same summer before we bought this house or anything, just to show them the place. And we told them that we were going to start hunting for a property here, but just as a vacation home. That's how we sold it, kind of knowing it was going to be more than that. We're still on the fence. It's hard to make it all happen. Um, and so she came then, and then after we bought the house, she's been back to stay with us a couple of times since then. She came for Christmas one year, and then she came over the summer one year too. And we go back every summer and stay with her. So that was the hardest thing about making the move, is because I'm an only child, and so these are my mother's only grandchildren, and so breaking it to her, that you're going to take her grandbabies, not just out of town, but out of the country, and all of that. That was a difficult uh, thing, but she said all the right things, and she seems fine with it.
Did you prepare some note cards, and did you sit side by side on the couch when you told her this?
I wasn't quite as nervous for that one, I guess.
I'm picturing your wife holding the cue cards and then you reading them as
I didn't think about cue cards. Yeah,
could be a new method. But what's the climate like in São Miguel?
it is in the 60s or 70s every day, all year round. We actually just had, I don't know if this is true, but someone told me last week we had our record low. Overnight, it got down to 49. And that, yeah, it never gets any colder than that. I mean, in the wintertime, it rains a lot. Usually it rains overnight and kind of clears up during the day. But yeah, today was super windy and rainy. And so they technically have hurricanes here, but it is nothing like the Caribbean. It's really nothing to be concerned about.
And then how do you get there? Do you fly to Lisbon?
No, Boston every day has one flight from Boston here and back.
Oh wow.
And
Okay.
in the summertime, and that's a Portuguese airline, or actually an Azorian airline that flies uh, between Boston and here every day, direct flight. But in the summertime, Delta and United, I think, fly from New York and Boston every day in the summer.
Well, it is a pleasure to meet you. I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me and to share a bit of your life story with my audience. I appreciate it. And I got to say, I'm envious of this life you're building in São Miguel. It sounds exotic and beautiful and like eminently sane.
Yeah, I thank you very much, and thanks for inviting me. Like, this is very honored to speak with you, and it's very excited and nervous about this. I'm a big fan of the show.
All right, there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. That was my conversation with Dave, age 49, an entrepreneur living in São Miguel, out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, 1,000 miles from any continent. Kind of makes you want to pack up, doesn't it? Kind of makes you want to travel in search of sanity. And then when you get there, just stay somehow. Just cling. Just hold on to a tree or something. Just like cling to a telephone pole, the bumper of a car. Chain yourself to a building. But great to talk with Dave. Fascinating life story. And remember that if you're out there and you're like, God, I really want to talk to Brad Listi. I want to tell him my life story. Or if you know somebody who fits that bill, you can email me. The address is letters@otherppl.com. And you too, or someone you know, could be a guest on this program for character studies. So thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to the Other People Show if you haven't done that yet. Hit the subscribe button wherever you listen. You can also subscribe on YouTube. Follow me on social media. I'm on Bluesky and Instagram. Sign up for my newsletter at Substack. If you love this show, if you appreciate it, if it means something to you, I hope you will join the Other People Patreon community over at patreon.com/otherpplpod. Help keep this show going into the future. If you want to join my book club or get an Other People t-shirt, just go to the show's official website, otherppl.com. If you want to check out my new company, it is called Deep Dive, and the web address is www.deepdive.audio. If you have 2 minutes and you want to help me out a little bit, please give this show a rating wherever you listen. So, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, what have you. Rate it, review it. It helps the show in the algorithm. it helps it find new listeners. Okay, so coming up on Tuesday, I will be back with a literary interview. My guest is Sonia Walger. She is the author of a debut novel called Lion, and it is excellent. And Sonia Walger is an actress. She was on Lost. She's done a lot of stuff, and she's also a brilliant novelist. It's an embarrassment of riches. So check it out on Tuesday. I'll be talking with Sonia Walger right here on the Other People Show.